What if Meghan Markle had quietly listed a title she wasn't allowed to use? Not in a royal gala, not in a magazine, but on her Hollywood resume. The very document meant to mark her return to acting, the one that could define the trajectory of her career. You might think it's harmless, a ceremonial flourish, a nod to her past. But in Hollywood, and in royal circles, every word matters. Every title, every line, every subtle claim carries weight. And in Meghan's case, it seems one line has ignited a firestorm that nobody saw coming. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The story begins with an Amazon MGM film, Close Personal Friends, a project already buzzing with intrigue long before cameras started rolling. Its creator, Isaac Aptaker, a name respected in television and film circles, suddenly finds himself at the center of a storm. The reason? Meghan Markle. And an HRH. Her resume, supposedly clean, professional, and ordinary, allegedly bore a title that she and Prince Harry had not been permitted to use since they stepped back from royal duties in 2020. HRH, the style reserved for active, working members of the royal family, was listed there. And that, according to insiders, was the moment the walls began to shake. Can you imagine the tension in a Hollywood writer's room or studio office when someone drops a document that has the potential to collapse careers, reputations, and years of careful PR work? Amazon MGM prides itself on precision, on the sanctity of contracts, on the fine print that keeps creative chaos from spinning into legal nightmares. And here, in a simple resume, or perhaps a bio sheet meant for internal production notes, was a bold claim. HRH, the Duchess of Sussex. No asterisk, no clarification, just a title. And suddenly, everyone wanted to know, how did this happen? Who authorized it? And more importantly, what does it mean for the film, for Meghan, and for Hollywood's delicate dance with royal protocol? Some might ask, was this an innocent oversight? Perhaps. But to those inside, who have spent years navigating the labyrinth of Hollywood credibility, a title isn't just a word. It is power, it is leverage, it is perception. When an actor lists an honorific like HRH, they are making a statement, not about the films they've starred in, but about who they are in the broader world. And when that actor is Meghan Markle, a woman who has been at the center of media scrutiny for decades, the implications are magnified exponentially. Think about it. Meghan's return to acting was already a calculated, high-stakes move. She left the royal family, moved continents, pivoted to media deals, authored books, produced content for Netflix, and yet Hollywood had always been the untested variable. Could she command roles on her own merit? Could she be taken seriously without the royal aura to back her? Her resume, her bio, her professional self-presentation were all critical components in the answer to that question. And the alleged HRH entry threatened to upend the very narrative she and her team had labored to craft. Isaac Aptaker, for his part, reportedly did what many in Hollywood would consider courageous and perhaps risky. He didn't look the other way. He allegedly challenged the HRH claim, raising questions that few dare to voice when dealing with a star of Meghan Markle's caliber. "We can't list HRH," he supposedly said, emphasizing legality, accuracy, and ethical standards. And here is where the drama intensifies. Hollywood, unlike Buckingham Palace, has no tolerance for inaccuracy, even ceremonial inaccuracies. And when a respected creator publicly, or even internally, flags such an issue, the ripple effect is immediate. Gossip spreads, internal tensions escalate, and reputations hang in the balance. Meanwhile, Meghan's team, seasoned in media maneuvering and crisis control, reportedly pushed back. Some sources claim they argued that the HRH listing was harmless, that it was ceremonial, that it reflected her identity even if she no longer held the title formally. This clash, between creative integrity and strategic branding, between internal studio protocol and star power, is the perfect storm that would eventually spiral out of control. How do you reconcile Hollywood's obsession with prestige, credits, and verifiable achievements with a woman who has been both royalty and celebrity, whose life straddles two worlds with completely different rules? And what about the timing? Meghan's return to acting is not just about art, it's about reclamation. She has spent years negotiating her identity on screens large and small, in documentaries, podcasts, and streaming projects. Close Personal Friends is more than a film. It is a statement. Every line she utters, every role she assumes, is an argument for her place in Hollywood's hierarchy. But then comes a single line on a CV, a line that claims HRH. And suddenly, the stakes are elevated from cinematic ambition to legal and ethical controversy. So what happened next? The rumor mill suggests that internal Amazon MGM emails began circulating. Staffers questioned the legitimacy of the title. Some allegedly whispered that the entry had been inserted without proper authorization. Others suggested it came directly from Meghan's PR machinery, a strategic push to reinforce her royal brand. Imagine the tension in these emails, the polite disclaimers, the legal caveats, the careful wording meant to shield both the film and the actress from backlash. And yet, the whispers grew louder, until it became impossible to ignore. Hollywood insiders were talking. Royal circles were noticing. The public would eventually catch wind. And that's where Isaac Aptaker's role becomes crucial. Sources claim that Aptaker's objection was not just procedural, but personal. As a creator, he prides himself on authenticity. He reportedly insisted that allowing HRH on the resume could compromise the integrity of the film's production. Could he have walked away from the project entirely? Some insiders say he considered it. He understood the power dynamics. Challenging a globally recognized star is risky, but remaining silent would mean complicity in something that blurred ethical and legal boundaries. And in Hollywood, complicity can tarnish a career. And then there's the audience. Yes, you, the viewer, the consumer of these stories. Think about how this impacts your perception of Meghan Markle. What does it say when a title that was officially revoked is allegedly still used in professional materials? Does it make her seem ambitious, deceptive, determined, or merely misunderstood? These are not trivial questions. They shape the narrative around her, influence media coverage, and ultimately affect her trajectory in Hollywood. How much of her identity is chosen, and how much is imposed by circumstance and expectation? How much of the HRH listing is strategic, and how much is miscommunication? These questions hang in the air, unanswered, tantalizing, impossible to ignore. As the scandal unfolds behind closed doors, more details leak. Staffers at Amazon MGM reportedly become divided, some supportive of Aptaker's insistence on accuracy, some concerned about antagonizing a high-profile talent. Then come the legal advisors, drafting language, preparing contingencies, trying to prevent a minor resume entry from escalating into a public relations crisis. And all of this before a single frame of Close Personal Friends has even been shot. The tension is palpable, the stakes immense, and the implications reach far beyond Hollywood studios and royal etiquette. They touch on credibility, integrity, and the delicate balance of celebrity and status in a world obsessed with both. And just when it seems the situation might settle into cautious internal negotiations, a leak changes everything. Details about the HRH listing, Aptaker's objections, and Meghan's team's responses begin circulating outside Amazon MGM. Journalists start asking questions. Headlines loom. Fans and critics alike weigh in. Suddenly, the story is not just a studio controversy. It's a public spectacle, a collision of royalty, celebrity, and Hollywood politics. And the questions only grow sharper. How did this happen? Who is responsible? Was it deliberate or accidental? What does it mean for the credibility of Meghan Markle, Isaac Aptaker, and the film itself? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What was supposed to be a quiet, behind-the-scenes project suddenly became a powder keg even before the cameras rolled. Close Personal Friends, Amazon MGM's highly anticipated film, was already generating buzz, not just for its intriguing storyline, but because of the star attached to it, Meghan Markle. For months, insiders had whispered about the project, describing it as a darkly comedic drama, full of suspense, secrets, and the kind of interpersonal dynamics that Hollywood loves to dissect. And now, with Meghan returning to acting after years of semi-hiatus, every production note, every casting decision, every internal email was scrutinized as though the fate of Hollywood itself rested in the balance. Isaac Aptaker, the film's creator and showrunner, had built his reputation carefully. Known for his work on character-driven narratives, emotional arcs, and stories that balance humor and heartbreak, he was widely respected. He was also known for precision. His scripts leave nothing to chance, and in production meetings, he is both meticulous and persuasive. For him, the story is sacred, but so is accuracy, even in the smallest details. When the controversy around Meghan's resume emerged, it landed directly on his desk, and he reportedly found himself in uncharted territory. From the very beginning, close personal friends had been a dream project for Amazon MGM. The film promised a fresh, intelligent look at complex relationships, a story that would resonate with audiences craving emotional authenticity. Casting Meghan Markle, with her unique combination of Hollywood experience and global celebrity, was seen as a coup. She brought instant attention, media coverage, and a built-in audience that few actors could match. But what also came with her was baggage. A decades-long history of public scrutiny, royal connections, and media narratives that could shift public perception with a single headline. The internal culture at Amazon MGM was vibrant, but careful. Every production team member understood that high-profile stars require not just careful direction, but careful management. From legal teams to casting directors, from assistants to executive producers, everyone had a role in ensuring that nothing jeopardized the film. But when Meghan's resume or bio sheet allegedly listed her as HRH, the Duchess of Sussex, all of those systems collided. Suddenly, something that should have been a routine administrative form became a flashpoint, a symbol of tension between celebrity ambition and institutional protocol. Imagine the scene. A conference room filled with executives, scripts stacked neatly on the table, laptops open, legal pads ready, and the HR department quietly murmuring concerns. An internal staffer glances at Meghan's bio, sees the HRH designation, and hesitates. Is this allowed? They whisper. The question is innocent, procedural, but the implications are enormous. It's not just about titles. It's about contracts, branding, legality, and reputation. And as word spreads, the studio's usually calm environment begins to crack at the edges. Isaac Aptaker reportedly took the matter seriously immediately. He is known for not shying away from difficult conversations, even when they involve powerful actors. He allegedly told colleagues that the HRH entry could not stand, citing both ethical considerations and potential legal repercussions. For a project already under intense scrutiny because of Meghan's return to acting, the last thing the team needed was an internal controversy that could spill into headlines. And yet, there it was, a simple line of text that had the power to ignite a storm. This chapter of events raises a critical question for the audience. Why would Meghan or her team list HRH on a professional resume in the first place? Was it an innocent mistake, a miscommunication between PR staff and administrative assistants, or a deliberate strategy to assert influence in Hollywood? For someone who has spent years navigating global fame, negotiating deals with media giants, and carefully curating public perception, the answer is rarely straightforward. Every action, every claim, is part of a larger strategy, whether consciously or subconsciously executed. The story takes another layer of complexity when we consider Hollywood culture itself. Titles, honors, and previous accolades can carry immense weight in negotiations. Studios are not immune to the allure of prestige. If a star appears more accomplished or carries symbolic authority, they may command better roles, higher salaries, and greater creative influence. In this context, the HRH designation could be interpreted as a tool, a way to remind the world of Meghan's past, to reinforce her significance, and to elevate her presence within the production hierarchy. But the legality and propriety of using such a title, especially for someone who had formally relinquished it, complicates the matter beyond a simple branding exercise. Meanwhile, tensions reportedly escalated behind the scenes. Some staffers questioned whether Meghan herself authorized the HRH listing. Others wondered if it was the work of her PR team, aiming to subtly enhance her prestige. Every meeting, every email, every whispered conversation carried a new layer of suspense. The lines between creative collaboration, legal compliance, and celebrity management blurred, creating a uniquely volatile environment. The chapter also introduces a psychological dimension to the controversy. Meghan's identity as a former working royal, a global celebrity, and an actress in her own right intersects with powerful cultural narratives about status, legitimacy, and recognition. How does someone negotiate these multiple identities, particularly when public perception is constantly scrutinized? And how do those around her, creators, producers, staffers, navigate the tension between professional ethics and deference to celebrity? This is not a simple conflict of authority. It is a collision of worlds, each with its own rules, expectations, and consequences. Aptaker's position is particularly delicate. As the film's creative lead, he must maintain both the integrity of the project and the trust of his collaborators. His decision to challenge the HRH listing was reportedly motivated not by personal animus, but by a commitment to accuracy and fairness. Yet, challenging a star of Meghan's profile carries risks. Could it disrupt production schedules? Could it alienate key talent or provoke negative media coverage? These questions underscore the high-stakes nature of Hollywood production, where a single line of text can cascade into a crisis affecting careers, contracts, and reputations. The tension extends beyond the walls of Amazon MGM. News of the HRH entry, whether intended or accidental, leaked quickly. Studio staff, legal teams, and producers became aware that this was no longer a private matter. The delicate balance of maintaining confidentiality while addressing internal concerns became increasingly difficult. Insiders reportedly feared that the issue could spiral into headlines, drawing public attention, media speculation, and scrutiny from royal observers. And indeed, as the story would eventually unfold, that fear was not unfounded. From the perspective of narrative storytelling, this chapter sets up the central conflict. A Hollywood film poised for success, a returning star with a complicated past, and a single, potentially controversial line that threatens to upend the project. The stakes are layered: legal, ethical, cultural, and personal. Every decision made in this period has consequences that extend far beyond the immediate production. And for viewers, the question remains: how did a seemingly minor administrative detail escalate into a controversy of this magnitude? As the production moves forward, the HRH controversy serves as both a catalyst and a lens. It magnifies tensions, exposes conflicting priorities, and forces both the studio and Meghan's team to confront questions they may have preferred to avoid. It also introduces a moral dimension. What is the responsibility of creators and executives when faced with potential misrepresentation, even in small, ceremonial forms? Aptaker's alleged decision to challenge the listing is emblematic of the ethical tightrope navigated in Hollywood, where ambition, reputation, and artistry collide. And just when it seems the tension could settle into quiet negotiation, the unthinkable happens. Internal communications about the HRH designation leak, setting off a chain reaction. Emails, memos, and whispered conversations begin circulating outside the immediate production team. Staffers start to speculate openly. Journalists pick up on the story. Legal advisors weigh in. And suddenly, what was once a minor internal dispute transforms into a matter of public interest, blurring the boundaries between Hollywood production, celebrity culture, and royal protocol. The mini cliffhanger that ends this chapter sets up the next. With close personal friends underway, the HRH listing is no longer just an administrative quirk. It has become a flashpoint, a symbol of ambition, identity, and the intricate power dynamics between a star, her team, and the creators tasked with bringing her back to the screen. But what happens when Hollywood's meticulous machinery collides with royal legacy, and who will emerge unscathed from the fallout? It all started with a piece of paper, a single page, unassuming at first glance, that had been circulated internally at Amazon MGM. On it were the details every studio needs: a bio, previous credits, awards, and professional highlights. But hidden in plain sight, like a spark in a dry forest, was a single, provocative line: HRH the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. And just like that, the studio's routine workflow turned into a high-stakes drama that could rival any Hollywood script. To most people, a resume is a mundane thing, a list of accomplishments, experiences, and skills. It's usually mundane because the stakes are rarely existential. But in Hollywood, every word matters. Every line is scrutinized, not only for accuracy, but for the perception it conveys. A title, a credit, or a previous award can become a bargaining chip, a negotiation lever, or even a point of legal concern. When Meghan Markle allegedly included HRH on a professional document, the reaction inside Amazon MGM reportedly ranged from stunned silence to outright alarm. Staffers who had spent years navigating high-profile productions immediately recognized the potential consequences. This wasn't just a small PR hiccup. It could, and almost did, spiral into something much larger. But why would someone do this? Was it deliberate? Was it innocent? Or was it a miscommunication somewhere in the labyrinth of PR, studio administration, and celebrity management? Some sources insist the line came directly from Meghan's team, carefully calculated to reinforce her prestige. Others suggest a clerk or assistant made the entry, thinking it a ceremonial flourish without realizing the legal and ethical implications. Whatever the origin, the effect was instantaneous. Emails were circulated. Legal advisors were summoned. Producers whispered anxiously. The HRH designation had become radioactive, and no one wanted to be caught holding it. Consider the broader context. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had formally relinquished their royal duties in 2020. Buckingham Palace issued a clear statement. The Sussexes will not use their HRH titles as they are no longer working members of the royal family. That line was designed to prevent exactly this sort of confusion, to establish clarity in both public and professional spheres. And yet, despite that official directive, the HRH designation reappeared, not on a charity event, not on a magazine cover, but on a document intended for Hollywood insiders. The audacity, whether intentional or accidental, immediately set the stage for conflict. Inside the studio, staff reportedly reacted in different ways. Some were incredulous. "Is this allowed?" One whispered, scanning the document again as if it might dissolve under scrutiny. Others were concerned about legal ramifications. Could the studio be accused of endorsing a false claim? Could investors, media partners, or other talent perceive this as a breach of trust? And in Hollywood, perception often outweighs reality. Even an unintentional misstep can have cascading consequences, affecting everything from project funding to box office projections. Then came the human element, the people behind the documents. Isaac Aptaker, as the film's creator, reportedly found himself walking a tightrope. On one hand, he needed to protect the integrity of the project, ensuring that no detail, however small, threatened the production's credibility. On the other hand, he had to navigate the delicate terrain of celebrity management, understanding that Meghan Markle's global stature afforded her influence and protection that most actors could only dream of. Challenging a star of her magnitude, even internally, required courage and a precise understanding of both the rules and the potential fallout. The presence of HRH on Meghan's resume also sparked philosophical and emotional questions within the studio. What does it mean when someone continues to claim a title they have formally relinquished? Is it vanity, oversight, or strategic branding? Does it reflect ambition or entitlement? These questions were not merely academic. They shaped how staff perceived Meghan's involvement in the film, how they prepared for negotiations, and how they handled publicity strategies. Every meeting, every email, every whispered conversation carried the weight of these unresolved questions. The ripple effects extended further. In Hollywood, rumors travel fast, and internal documents rarely stay private. Once word of the HRH designation leaked to staff outside of the immediate production team, speculation grew. Some employees reportedly began analyzing the implications in terms of press coverage, potential backlash, and even legal risk. The story became a puzzle with multiple moving pieces: the title itself, the studio's responsibilities, the potential for media exposure, and the reactions of royal observers. Every stakeholder had a vested interest in both understanding the situation and controlling it, yet none had complete authority to dictate outcomes. And then there were the external pressures. The media, always hungry for a story that combined celebrity and royalty, could easily seize on the HRH line. A single leak, a single tweet, could transform an internal studio discussion into a viral headline. The combination of Meghan Markle, Hollywood, and a royal designation was irresistible to journalists, bloggers, and social media commentators alike. Amazon MGM suddenly faced not just an internal dilemma, but the looming threat of public scrutiny, a scenario that could affect not only the film but the reputations of everyone involved, from production staff to executives. The inclusion of HRH also underscored a deeper cultural tension, the collision between Hollywood and royalty. Hollywood thrives on fame, status, and perception. Royalty commands respect, authority, and symbolism. When these two worlds intersect, even a single word can carry disproportionate weight. For Meghan, the HRH designation was more than a title. It was a signal, intentional or otherwise, of prestige, legitimacy, and personal narrative. For the studio, it was a challenge. How to reconcile the star's ambitions with professional standards, legal guidelines, and ethical obligations. As emails circulated internally, some staff reportedly began to voice their opinions more openly. Some were concerned that ignoring the HRH line could signal complacency, that allowing it to stand would undermine the studio's credibility. Others worried that challenging the entry would provoke Meghan's team and create tension that could affect on-set collaboration. The debate became a delicate balancing act, navigating legal considerations, ethical standards, creative vision, and the management of a high-profile talent. Every decision was fraught with potential consequences, and the pressure to resolve the situation quickly grew. And then came the element of surprise. According to insiders, it wasn't just the HRH designation itself that caused the stir, it was the combination of timing, context, and visibility. The resume or bio sheet circulated during a sensitive period of production planning, where schedules, contracts, and publicity strategies were being finalized. Any controversy at this stage could have delayed filming, disrupted promotional timelines, and potentially affected the film's commercial prospects. In Hollywood, timing is everything, and this controversy arrived at the worst possible moment. By the end of the day, the HRH listing had morphed from a seemingly innocuous detail into a matter of internal concern, legal scrutiny, and reputational risk. The question on everyone's mind was no longer, why is it here? But what do we do about it? Staffers debated strategies: remove it quietly, challenge it openly, or escalate it to executives. Every option carried potential fallout, and no choice seemed risk-free. The studio had to act quickly, carefully, and decisively. Yet, even the best-laid plans could not anticipate the media storm that was about to follow. And just when it seemed the internal debates might settle, Isaac Aptaker's intervention would dramatically shift the trajectory of the story. His stance on the HRH designation, his insistence on accuracy, and his unwillingness to compromise would create new conflicts, new challenges, and new drama. Setting the stage for the next chapter, where Hollywood's rules, Meghan's ambitions, and royal protocol would collide in ways nobody could have predicted. What happens when a Hollywood creator, known for his meticulous storytelling and unwavering commitment to authenticity, decides to challenge a globally recognized star? That question defines the next stage of this unfolding drama. Isaac Aptaker, the mind behind Close Personal Friends, reportedly found himself confronting a dilemma few showrunners ever face: balancing professional integrity against the delicate egos and enormous influence of Meghan Markle. The HRH designation on her resume, already causing internal unease, became the catalyst for a confrontation that would ripple throughout Amazon MGM, Hollywood, and even royal observers. Aptaker is a figure accustomed to managing complex narratives, juggling multiple storylines, and resolving creative disputes with diplomacy and precision. But this was different. This wasn't about dialogue or plot structure. It was about truth, legality, and reputation. According to insiders, when he reviewed Meghan's CV, the moment he saw HRH, the Duchess of Sussex, his reaction was immediate. He reportedly raised the issue with studio executives, stressing the potential consequences of allowing such a title to remain unchallenged. It wasn't just a ceremonial inaccuracy. It was, in his view, a misrepresentation with serious ethical and legal implications. Imagine the tension in the room as he spoke. On one side, there was a star whose very name brings attention, press coverage, and commercial value to the project. On the other, a respected creator asserting that internal standards, accuracy, and compliance could not be compromised. Aptaker's insistence was reportedly calm, yet firm. The title could not remain. The HRH designation was no longer merely a symbolic flourish. It was a potential liability. If used publicly or even internally, it could provoke legal scrutiny, media backlash, and questions from royal officials. He framed his argument not as a personal attack, but as a commitment to the integrity of the project itself. Sources say this was not a unilateral decision. Aptaker reportedly sought counsel from Amazon MGM legal teams, production managers, and executives to ensure that his position was both defensible and aligned with studio policy. He understood the stakes. Challenging a star could lead to tension on set, delays in production, or even the risk of losing a high-profile actor. But remaining silent, he believed, would compromise the credibility of the film and the studio. It was a classic ethical quandary: risk confrontation for the sake of principle or acquiesce for the sake of harmony. The reactions to Aptaker's objection were reportedly mixed. Some executives appreciated his stance, recognizing that allowing HRH to remain on internal documentation could set a dangerous precedent, not just for Meghan, but for all talent in the studio. Others were concerned about potential fallout. Hollywood operates on relationships as much as contracts. Antagonizing a star can have far-reaching consequences. Every staffer in the room knew that the ripple effects could extend beyond this one project, affecting future collaborations, public perception, and media narratives. Meanwhile, Aptaker's intervention created tension within Meghan's team. Sources indicate that her representatives were frustrated, viewing the objection as a challenge to the actress's authority or as an unnecessary obstacle in her professional trajectory. Some insiders suggest that they argued the HRH listing was ceremonial or symbolic, claiming it reflected her identity even if she had relinquished the formal title. They reportedly pushed back, emphasizing prestige, branding, and the strategic advantage of highlighting her former royal status. This clash between creative integrity and celebrity branding exposed the fragile intersection of Hollywood and royalty. In most productions, a resume is a technical document, a straightforward compilation of work history and achievements. In this case, the resume became a battleground for identity, authority, and perception. Aptaker's objection was not just a matter of studio policy. It was a statement about accountability, responsibility, and truth in a world where image often outweighs fact. The tension reportedly intensified as internal discussions continued. Some staffers sympathized with Aptaker, seeing his position as a principled stand to protect the studio and maintain credibility. Others worried that the confrontation could escalate, creating conflict with Meghan's team that might spill into the public sphere. Emails, memos, and private messages began circulating, documenting arguments, responses, and counterpoints. Each note added pressure, each discussion amplified scrutiny, and each decision seemed to hold the potential for significant repercussions. Meanwhile, the broader context magnified the stakes. Royal protocol, legal obligations, and public perception were all at play. The HRH designation was not merely symbolic, it was regulated. Buckingham Palace had made it clear in 2020 that Harry and Meghan could no longer use HRH. Its appearance on a Hollywood CV risked undermining that directive, raising questions from both legal advisors and royal observers. Aptaker's insistence on removing or correcting the designation was therefore not merely a professional quibble. It was a preventative measure against a cascade of reputational and legal risks. Adding to the drama was the internal speculation about intent. Did Meghan authorize the listing, or was it the work of her team? Was it a deliberate branding move, or an innocent clerical error? These questions fueled debates behind closed doors, creating a charged atmosphere where every action was analyzed for motives, consequences, and optics. Aptaker's objection, though principled, became a focal point, drawing attention from multiple sides and escalating the stakes beyond what anyone had anticipated when the project was first conceived. In the midst of this tension, Aptaker reportedly maintained his composure, balancing firmness with diplomacy. He insisted that the HRH line be addressed, while also acknowledging the sensitivities involved in challenging a star of Meghan's global stature. His approach reportedly emphasized collaboration and transparency, seeking solutions that would satisfy studio standards without alienating talent. Yet the challenge was enormous. How to enforce accountability without sparking public controversy? How to correct a potential misrepresentation without igniting media speculation? And just when it seemed the matter could be handled internally, a leak changed everything. Details about AppTaker's objections, his discussions with executives, and the HRH designation itself began circulating beyond Amazon MGM. Staffers discussed it in hushed tones, emails were forwarded, and suddenly, what had been a private studio matter became a story with the potential to reach journalists, social media, and royal observers. The careful balance AppTaker had sought to maintain was now at risk of collapse, setting the stage for public scrutiny, speculation, and the inevitable clash of Hollywood, celebrity, and royal protocol. As the story unfolded, questions emerged for everyone involved. How far should a creator go to uphold accuracy? What are the limits of a star's branding in professional documents? Can Hollywood and royalty coexist without friction? AppTaker's objection, principled though it was, became a turning point, a flashpoint that would define the trajectory of both the film and Meghan's return to acting. And just when everyone thought the internal debates might settle, the next unexpected twist appeared. Meghan's team, far from backing down, allegedly escalated the issue, arguing more forcefully for the HRH listing and pushing the studio into uncharted territory. The confrontation, which began with a single line on a CV, was about to explode into a full-blown crisis that no one in Hollywood or royal circles had anticipated. Just when it seemed that internal studio protocols might hold sway, Meghan Markle's team made their move. The HRH controversy, which had been simmering quietly within Amazon MGM's offices, suddenly flared into open conflict. Sources indicate that her representatives pushed back, and not subtly. Emails, phone calls, and private meetings reportedly carried a tone of urgency, insistence, and even quiet insistence that the HRH designation remain. They framed it as ceremonial or symbolic, arguing that it represented Meghan's enduring identity rather than a formal claim. But for many inside the studio, it was impossible to separate symbolism from legitimacy. Imagine the scene: legal advisors leaning over their laptops, production staff whispering in corridors, executive producers balancing risk and diplomacy, all while Meghan's team pressed their argument. One insider allegedly described the situation as a clash between principle and power. On one side, Isaac AppTaker and studio staff emphasized accuracy, compliance, and credibility. On the other, Meghan's team emphasized prestige, personal branding, and the historical significance of her former royal role. Every point of debate carried weight, and every decision could have ramifications beyond the immediate production. The pushback reportedly went beyond polite clarification. Some sources claim that Meghan's team attempted to frame the HRH designation as a harmless embellishment, a way to signal distinction in Hollywood's competitive ecosystem. In their view, the title was part of her brand, a recognition of her past achievements, and a tool for positioning her within the entertainment industry. They allegedly argued that denying her the use of the title would undervalue her unique identity, as though Hollywood somehow needed constant reminders of her global significance. Internal communications reportedly captured the tension. Emails referenced the potential fallout of removing the HRH line, noting that doing so might provoke public scrutiny, upset the star, or create narrative complications for upcoming promotional efforts. Some staff members expressed frustration, questioning whether the studio could enforce standards without igniting a backlash. Others tried to mediate, proposing compromise solutions, perhaps rewording the designation, adding context, or using footnotes. But the disagreement persisted, and the stakes only grew higher. The underlying conflict was not just procedural, it was emotional and symbolic. For Meghan's team, HRH was a reminder of status, influence, and global recognition. It was more than a title, it was a symbol of identity, a legacy, and a narrative asset. For studio staff, it was a potential legal and ethical violation, a deviation from established protocol that could compromise both integrity and credibility. The clash exposed the fault lines between Hollywood's obsession with image and prestige and the rigid, codified rules governing royal titles. the studio reportedly faced a dilemma. Yield to the demands of a star's team and risk the perception of inaccuracy, or insist on removing the designation and risk alienating a globally recognized talent. Every option carried consequences. Sources suggest that internal discussions became more frequent, more intense, and more strategic. Meetings lasted longer. Arguments grew more detailed. Every word, every phrase, every potential framing of the issue was debated, analyzed, and scrutinized. The situation had moved far beyond a single resume line. It had become a negotiation of power, influence, and professional authority. At the same time, the potential media fallout was on everyone's mind. In Hollywood, stories leak quickly, and narratives take on a life of their own. The combination of Meghan Markle, Amazon MGM, and a disputed royal title was irresistible to journalists and bloggers. Any misstep could quickly transform into headlines, tweets, and trending stories. The HRH designation, which might have gone unnoticed in most productions, had become a focal point of controversy, one that had implications not just for the film, but for reputations, public perception, and the delicate balance of celebrity and protocol. The conflict also exposed divisions among studio staff. Some sympathized with Aptaker's insistence on accuracy, agreeing that allowing the HRH title to remain could compromise credibility. Others, however, were concerned about the ramifications of challenging a high-profile actor. They feared public backlash, internal tension, and potential delays in production. The debate reportedly grew more polarized as Meghan's team continued to press their position, insisting that the title reflect her identity and enduring influence. Amid this tension, creative considerations added another layer of complexity. Aptaker's vision for close personal friends was precise and intentional. Any external conflict, especially one involving a star's representation, could disrupt the project's narrative, casting dynamics, and promotional strategy. Sources indicate that the creative team worried about how the HRH controversy might affect morale, on-set relationships, and the film's overall cohesion. Every decision about the resume designation carried implications that extended far beyond the document itself. The emotional stakes were high. For Meghan, the HRH designation was more than a line on a page. It was a statement of identity, a link to her past, and a subtle assertion of influence in Hollywood. For Aptaker and the studio, it was a test of integrity, professionalism, and adherence to standards. The collision of these perspectives created a combustible environment, where small missteps could escalate into larger disputes, and where every participant felt the weight of both personal and professional consequences. Insiders claimed that the pushback from Meghan's team was relentless. Meetings reportedly stretched for hours, with detailed arguments, references to precedent, and appeals to branding, prestige, and influence. Staffers felt caught in the middle, attempting to balance competing priorities while navigating the sensitivities of a globally recognized figure. Each conversation seemed to raise the stakes higher, leaving staffers questioning whether the studio could resolve the issue without a public incident. And then, just when the internal negotiations seemed to be reaching a tentative impasse, a new complication emerged: a leak. Emails documenting the disagreement between Aptaker, studio executives, and Meghan's team began circulating beyond the immediate production circle. Staffers whispered about the potential for headlines. Journalists caught wind of the story, and suddenly, the HRH debate was no longer confined to internal meetings. It was poised to enter the public domain. The stakes had shifted dramatically, from studio policy to global scrutiny. At this moment, the HRH designation was no longer a ceremonial line. It had become a lightning rod for discussions about celebrity, royalty, identity, and power. Internal debates, media speculation, and royal observers all converged, creating a situation of unprecedented intensity. Every action, every statement, and every decision would now be magnified, analyzed, and interpreted through multiple lenses. The mini cliffhanger ending this chapter sets the stage for what comes next. As Meghan's team escalates, Isaac Aptaker faces new pressures, internal divisions intensify, and the HRH controversy edges closer to a public spectacle that could reshape both the production and the perception of everyone involved. The next chapter will reveal how leaks, insider commentary, and mounting tensions begin to transform a single resume line into a crisis that no one in Hollywood, or in royal circles, could have predicted. The HRH controversy had already been simmering behind closed doors, a tension-filled standoff between Isaac Aptaker, the studio, and Meghan Markle's representatives. But like any fire left unattended in Hollywood's sprawling bureaucracy, it was destined to flare into public consciousness. According to insiders, it wasn't a carefully orchestrated media leak. It was the result of human curiosity, frustration, and a little recklessness. Someone within Amazon MGM, perhaps a staffer who had grown weary of the escalating arguments, decided that the internal emails needed an audience beyond the boardroom. And once the leak happened, the story exploded. The leaked materials reportedly included email threads, memos, and meeting summaries, documenting Aptaker's objections, Meghan's team's pushback, and the HRH designation itself. Suddenly, what had been an internal disagreement became fodder for speculation, analysis, and debate. Hollywood thrives on stories of conflict, especially when they involve celebrity, power, and controversy. The moment the leak hit, insiders realized the stakes had escalated beyond the studio walls. The HRH line was no longer just an internal concern. It was now a public story waiting to happen. The timing of the leak was critical. Production schedules were underway, contracts were being finalized, and promotional strategies were in the planning phase. The HRH designation, once a minor internal detail, was now a potential PR disaster. Staffers reportedly scrambled to contain the fallout, debating whether to frame it as a misunderstanding, a clerical error, or a deliberate branding move. Each scenario carried consequences. A simple clerical error could minimize the perceived intent but risked undermining credibility. Framing it as branding could provoke public outrage and questions about propriety. Whatever decision was made, the leak had already set the narrative in motion, and controlling it was no longer entirely possible. The leak also prompted a wave of speculation about motivation. Who had leaked the information and why? Some insiders suggest it was a frustrated production assistant, someone who had grown tired of internal arguments and wanted to force clarity. Others theorized that it was an intentional move by a staffer seeking attention or leverage. And still others wondered whether it was a strategic play by someone with ties to the media, aimed at testing reactions or manipulating public perception. In Hollywood, motives are rarely pure, and the HRH leak offered endless avenues for interpretation, debate, and speculation. As the leaked materials circulated internally, staffers reportedly became divided. Some sympathized with Aptaker's principled stance, applauding his insistence on accuracy and ethical adherence. Others worried that the leak could jeopardize relationships with the star and her team. Email chains reportedly grew longer, discussions more heated, and tensions more visible. What had started as a quiet disagreement about a line on a resume now threatened to dominate internal communications, distract from production priorities, and create a storm of scrutiny that could reach journalists and fans alike. A central question emerged. Why now? Why had someone chosen this precise moment to leak internal communications? Sources indicate that the HRH designation had been a topic of discussion for weeks, but the leak coincided with crucial production milestones. Contracts were being signed. Promotional campaigns were being drafted. By surfacing the internal debate at this juncture, the leak maximized potential impact, forcing studio executives, legal advisors, and Aptaker himself to respond under pressure. Timing, it seems, was as deliberate as the content itself. The leak's effect was immediate. Whisper networks within the studio became active, rumors spread, and staffers began speculating about public exposure. Who would get wind of the story first? How would journalists interpret the information? Would Meghan's team respond publicly or attempt to contain the situation privately? Each scenario carried implications not only for the film, but for the careers and reputations of everyone involved. For Aptaker, the leak intensified scrutiny of his role, positioning him as both a principled observer and a potential instigator of controversy. The media, though not yet formally involved, loomed in the background. Hollywood leaks travel fast, often with unintended consequences. Journalists monitor industry chatter, social media posts, and even internal forums to catch early signs of stories that could capture public attention. The HRH designation, combined with Meghan Markle's celebrity, had all the makings of a headline. Insider accounts suggest that the leak created a heightened sense of urgency within the studio. Legal teams scrambled, public relations staff prepared talking points, and executives strategized containment measures, all in an effort to prevent internal debates from becoming an external scandal. As discussions unfolded, the human element of the leak became apparent. Staffers were caught between loyalty to app-taker, respect for the star, and concern for their own professional reputations. Each decision about whether to forward emails, comment on discussions, or participate in debates carried consequences. In a high-profile environment, the line between professional responsibility and personal risk is razor-thin. And in this case, the HRH leak illuminated those tensions in stark relief. Furthermore, the leak exposed cracks in the studio's internal communication processes. How had such sensitive information circulated beyond immediate stakeholders? Why had existing protocols failed to contain it? Internal audits, meetings, and discussions reportedly followed, not just to understand the leak itself, but to prevent future breaches. The incident revealed the pressures and vulnerabilities inherent in managing high-profile productions, especially when globally recognized talent intersects with institutional standards. As the leak's impact grew, attention turned to Meghan Markle's team. Reports suggest that they were furious, viewing the leak as a violation of trust and a deliberate attempt to undermine their control over her public image. Internal discussions allegedly intensified, with staffers debating whether to respond proactively, ignore the leak, or seek corrective measures. For the first time, the conflict extended beyond studio walls, highlighting the delicate interplay of celebrity, control, and narrative management in Hollywood. By the end of the day, the HRH designation had moved from a seemingly minor internal detail to a central point of controversy. Every stakeholder, studio executives, production staff, legal teams, media observers, and the star's representatives, was now invested in how the situation would unfold. The leak had transformed a procedural dispute into a high-stakes narrative with the potential to influence public perception, production timelines, and the reputations of everyone involved. And just when the studio thought they might regain control, another development emerged. A senior Hollywood insider reportedly contacted a journalist, providing context for the HRH designation and app-takers' objections. The stage was set for the next level of escalation, where internal debates would intersect with public scrutiny, and the story could no longer remain contained within Amazon MGM. The drama was about to move from boardrooms and email threads to headlines, commentary, and global discussion. The mini cliffhanger ending this chapter leaves one question hanging in the air. Once internal conflicts leak into the public domain, how can anyone control the narrative? What happens when Hollywood's obsession with celebrity collides with the rigid protocols of royalty? And who will be left standing when the dust settles? Up to this point, the HRH controversy had been primarily a Hollywood problem, a tense, behind-the-scenes conflict between Isaac Aptaker, Amazon MGM, and Meghan Markle's representatives. But Hollywood does not exist in a vacuum, and royalty does. The moment the leaks surfaced and rumors began to circulate, the story inevitably reached ears far beyond the studio. Buckingham Palace, accustomed to handling the optics of royal titles and protocol, reportedly became aware of the HRH designation appearing on Meghan's resume, and their attention would turn what had been a private dispute into a matter of royal concern. To understand the stakes, consider this: the HRH title is not just a ceremonial flourish. It is a symbol of authority, privilege, and responsibility within the royal family. When Meghan and Prince Harry stepped back from royal duties in 2020, Buckingham Palace issued a clear statement. The Sussexes will not use their HRH titles as they are no longer working members of the royal family. This directive was meant to prevent confusion, protect the integrity of the monarchy, and establish clear boundaries for public and private engagements. In that context, seeing HRH on a Hollywood resume is not merely an oversight. It is a violation of an agreed-upon rule, one that the palace takes seriously. Insiders suggest that the palace's reaction was measured but firm. No public statement was immediately issued, and no press conference called. Instead, Senior aides reportedly reviewed the leaked materials internally, assessing the implications and consulting legal advisors. They were tasked with understanding whether this was a casual mistake, an unauthorized action by a third party, or a deliberate attempt to leverage royal prestige for commercial gain. Every detail mattered, and the palace's silence was not indifference. It was strategic calculation. At the same time, the leak had already created a ripple effect in Hollywood. Journalists, bloggers, and social media commentators began speculating about the HRH designation, linking it directly to Meghan's influence in the film industry. Rumors suggested that Amazon MGM executives were caught between respecting a global celebrity and maintaining professional standards. With the palace now aware of the situation, the narrative shifted. What was once a Hollywood debate was now a collision of royalty, legality, and media scrutiny. The implications were immense. Royal aides reportedly discussed potential courses of action. Options included formal reminders to Meghan and Harry about the 2020 agreement, private correspondence with the studio, or allowing the matter to settle quietly without public interference. Each option carried risks. A public rebuke could inflame media attention, potentially casting Meghan in a negative light. Silence could be interpreted as tacit approval, undermining the authority of the palace and creating precedent for others to exploit royal titles. Meanwhile, within Amazon MGM, the presence of royal attention intensified internal anxieties. Staffers realized that they were no longer dealing with a simple resume line. They were navigating a legal and symbolic minefield. Meetings reportedly became more frequent, with executives discussing strategies to mitigate potential fallout. Legal teams considered implications for contracts, marketing materials, and public statements. Even seemingly minor decisions, such as whether to allow the HRH designation in promotional copy or internal documentation, became matters of high-stakes negotiation. The psychological dynamics were equally compelling. For Meghan, the HRH title is more than a line on paper. It represents identity, history, and status. For the royal household, HRH is an institutionally protected designation tied to duties, responsibility, and protocol. The tension between personal identity and institutional authority became sharply visible, creating a drama that was as emotional as it was procedural. Inside the studio, staffers reportedly felt caught in the middle, navigating not only the expectations of a global star, but also the unspoken pressure of royal attention. Sources indicate that the palace's awareness had additional effects behind the scenes. Production schedules, casting decisions, and promotional plans were all revisited, not because the film itself had changed, but because the potential for external scrutiny had increased. Amazon MGM faced an unprecedented balancing act, ensuring that the project could continue smoothly while respecting both the creative process and the authority of a global institution. Every step forward required careful consideration, weighing the desires of the star against the expectations of the studio and the expectations of royalty. At the same time, media speculation intensified. Even without a public statement, journalists and commentators began connecting the dots. Meghan Markle, Hollywood, HRH, and Amazon MGM. Social media buzzed with interpretations, accusations, and theories. Every insider email, every studio memo, every minor discrepancy in timing became fodder for analysis. The story was no longer contained. It was alive, evolving, and unpredictable. The HRH designation also highlighted broader questions about identity, power, and ambition. How does a former working royal navigate life in Hollywood? How should the royal household respond when titles are used outside of formal contexts? What are the ethical considerations for studios, creators, and PR teams in managing the narrative around global celebrities? These questions did not have easy answers, and their complexity only added tension to an already fraught situation. Meanwhile, internal divisions persisted. Some staffers advocated for immediate correction or removal of the HRH line, emphasizing adherence to professional standards. Others urged caution, warning that any hasty action could provoke backlash from Meghan or her team. The palace's involvement, even if indirect, added another layer of pressure, making the stakes higher than anyone had anticipated. Decisions could no longer be made in isolation. They would be scrutinized by multiple audiences, each with their own expectations and sensitivities. As tension mounted, the story began to spiral toward a critical juncture. Reports suggest that emails and discussions that had been confidential were now being referenced in broader conversations, both within and outside the studio. The potential for public exposure, legal scrutiny, and reputational impact loomed larger with each passing day. Staffers reportedly began to realize that the HRH designation, once a minor administrative matter, could affect not only the film and its production timeline, but also the broader perception of Meghan Markle, Amazon MGM, and even the royal household itself. And just when it seemed that the situation might stabilize behind closed doors, the next twist emerged. Journalists reached out to Isaac Aptaker for comment. Suddenly, a private disagreement had the potential to become a public spectacle. Aptaker, previously navigating the situation internally, now faced the challenge of managing media inquiries while protecting both the integrity of the film and his own professional reputation. The collision of Hollywood, royalty, and public scrutiny was now fully underway. The mini cliffhanger at the end of this chapter sets the stage for what comes next. How Aptaker's off-record comments, combined with leaks and internal conflicts, would propel the HRH controversy into headlines, escalate tensions between Hollywood and the palace, and force every stakeholder to confront questions about identity, power, and accountability that they had hoped to avoid.